Coming tonight. Unfortunately, the microphones aren't working, so we're going to do our best to be loud. Do scooch forward wherever possible. There's a few spare seats around the side, if anyone can't hear at the back. But yeah, we're just going to begin. So I'm Alex, I'll be interviewing Will tonight. We're going to chat for about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, for some audience Q&As. So if everyone could join me in putting your hands together for the TikTok sensation, debut author, all-around great person, William Moore. So just before we properly begin, I'm sure most of you do know, but for anyone that doesn't know and has been dragged along by a friend, the reason we're here tonight is to celebrate Will's debut novel after a very successful Kickstarter. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So amazing to see so many of you here. Thank you all for coming. It really means a lot. Sorry about the sound. Do let us know at the back if you can't hear us. I'm going to do my best to project. Yeah, good. It's been a wild few months.
So for anyone that hasn't read the book yet, do you want to very briefly describe it?
So, the Grimoire of Forgotten Fairytales is a collection of mostly poems, quite a lot of nursery rhymes which have been extended into a dark kind of Eldritch horror, dark cosmic horror twist, and some short stories. It started, I made some TikTok sketches. I came up with the idea, first of all, of the magpie rhyme, one for sorrow, two for joy, and thought, how does that go on? And it's obviously touched something with people and did very well, and yeah, we kind of rolled from there, and people wanted the book, and here we are. It's been amazing.
Yeah, so before we get into further questions, do you want to start with a reading from the book?
Yeah.
Just to set the scene, provide a bit of a spooky Halloween sort of
That's
idea.
nice. One second. Okay. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. Yet in the murmur of the olden tones lies the truth that sets us free. Words, mere whispers in the wind, hold a power unseen. In the echo of a name, my friend, awakens magic, ancient and keen. An innocent utterance, soft and light, can call forth a spectral host. Stones may shatter in the night, yet in names lies the true cost. Sticks and stones may wound the skin, a pang that will soon desert, but a name can stir the darkness within, unleash a pain covert. Beware the old power of spoken words, more potent than any bite. For sticks and stones may break my bones, but a name is an ancient right.
So, obviously, let's rewind 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And it's all started with a TikTok that did very well. What was that like? Was that your first time going viral? Was it any inkling?
So, yeah, it was a strange one. I've been on TikTok since I think it was about 2020. It was the pandemic started. So I'm, for those of you that don't know, I'm also an actor, performer, storyteller in general, and a musician. So mainly I started TikTok to try and promote my music. And
How did that go?
It's okay, not as well as this. But yeah, ticking along. And then I was watching it, just trying to learn what people were doing well, trying different things out. I think perseverance is really the key with some of these things. I got into a bit of a niche of doing like politics and current events content, which I still do a bit of, which did quite well. But yeah, it's not a great answer, but it was almost a sort of spur of the moment idea. And yeah, it really took off. And then I just kind of started delving into that and trying to work out what it was that was capturing the imagination so much with that. And yeah.
Great. How is the volume level? Can people at the back hear me? Can I get a sweet thumbs up all the way at the back? That's great. Great. So would you say going viral, is it something you could do again? Is it an art? Is it a science? Do you know what went right there?
It's a combination of things. You can't ever predict, and you should never. I don't think anyone that's kind of in that social media business should just be aiming to go viral. I think you should always ultimately make content that you want to make and that you're passionate about, because I think particularly with younger audiences and audiences online nowadays, authenticity is what kind of sells it. That being said, yeah, there are things you can work on, make sure you've got a good hook. People's attention span seems to just be getting shorter and shorter. So grabbing their attention and, yeah, telling a story, having a clear beginning, middle and end. Still, sometimes the old tricks are the best.
Okay, so it's not about working the algorithm, finding out what's hot that week.
I think, to some extent, you can get success on these platforms by looking at what's trending, doing the right hashtags, doing the trending dances and things. But if you want to build a community and kind of keep that growing, it needs to be something authentic and something that you passionate. I mean, if you love that stuff, then great, yeah, that will work. But people, I think, can tell more than ever now when you're being inauthentic.
So with that in mind, do you think you'd have done better had you been doing a trendy dance while reading poetry?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yes.
Yeah, I have to try and find out.
So when did you first think that it could be something bigger? Like, how long was the delay between success on social media and thinking you could turn this into something more long-term?
It was, with the book, it was quite a quick turnaround. So that first video did, it's up to something crazy like 4 million views now. But I hit about 600,000-700,000 pretty much overnight. And then I did another one which performed similarly. And just so many of the comments were, a few like introducing me to things, pieces of art, literature that were great and I didn't know about, but also just asking if I had a book of them. So I thought, well, if people want them to.
And how was that, like going from making short form, 30-second or so, or minute pieces to launching into a project that would take you months and you would review and edit and work with illustrators? And in terms of the timescale involved, how was that transition?
It was a huge learning curve, and a great experience in hindsight, but a lot of hard work. So the first bit of writing, I think I was lulled into a false sense of security because I'd done a few of those TikTok sketches, and so I sort of had some of the rhymes ready to go, and kind of popped them in there. I thought, oh, this might write itself. Didn't do that. But yeah, it was. What were we saying?
How was writing something longer compared
yes.
to doing TikTok?
So self-publishing is a whole minefield. So I remember when I was a bit younger, 11 or 12, I published a little book for my dad for Christmas. And so I think some part of my head thought, oh, well, you can kind of do anything on the internet, so I'll write the words and then there'll be a book. And it's a little more complicated, and I can sort of see why people have deals with big expensive publishers who know what they're doing, have lots of money behind them now. But for all the hard work it was, I'm really grateful because I think I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
The whole experience.
Speaking of learning a lot, did you think the Kickstarter, do you think, it's a sure thing, this is easy? Do you think your goal was very ambitious? Like, what was your mindset going into Kickstarter?
I tried to set what I thought was a realistic, if slightly ambitious target, based on the kind of response on social media. I was sort of hopeful. I thought 30 days is a long time, I can keep making content. I knew that my content was kind of working. I thought I could try and get some people over. Maybe I'd hit the target or fall just short. I didn't expect we hit almost twice, just over twice, I think, the target, which is crazy. And I'm so grateful.
Great. Would you have any advice for someone looking to do the same?
So with social media, like I say, so in terms of the art form and the craft, it is a matter of anything. Make sure you do your research, look at what other people are doing well, find what you want to do, make sure you're passionate about it. But then there's things like having a good hook. People's attention spans are short. A visual hook, either that being on screen, whether you're doing something exciting, what you're saying, you really need to grab people's attention in 2 or 3 seconds now. And people have different opinions about what that means for us culturally, but that's kind of where we are. And then things like search engine optimization, boring stuff, but keywords, make sure you're putting in subtitles now. People love subtitles. Technical stuff.
You mentioned a few times the technical stuff, also looking at the comments, seeing what people like, people react, people suggest. how do you balance that kind of commercial sense of all this might do well with a genuine artistic kind of narrative? Because you kind of need both in today.
You do, but I think the content is king. I think you have to be authentic, do something you're passionate about and love first, and then it's about how can you polish that, how can you make that reach a wider audience, what can you do? Because if you're just thinking, oh, if I, to use all these trending hashtags, I'll do amazingly, I just don't think it will work.
Fair. So how did it feel when the Kickstarter, well, first hit its goal, and then did you have the stretch goals planned? Were you panicking, scrabbling, trying to find stretch goals after it did really well?
I don't know about panicking. I did not have the stretch goals planned.
This was one of them, wasn't it? We're all here because of a stretch goal.
So for those of you that don't know, with the Kickstarter project, there's a target amount that you have to raise for the project to be successfully funded, and if you don't hit that, then you don't get any of the money. It just goes back to the people. And then what tends to happen is if you do hit the target, you're then kind of creating artificial new targets with stretch goals, like new extra things you can do. So one of them was to have a live launch event, which is why we're here. And then another one was to give everyone who backed the project a bookmark, which we did, which was lovely to be able to do. We've got some extra ones there if you want to grab one at the end as well. So I wasn't really expecting that, but it was just amazing. Blown away. There's obviously something about storytelling, and particularly with the nursery rhymes, the old words, that captures the imagination. And I've always been a big fan of like Eldritch horror, dark fantasy. Grew up reading Neil Gaiman's work, watching Doctor Who. My oldest childhood friend Liam, his dad's Dave McKean, and obviously his work's inspirational. Also, I remember about 10, 15 years ago, I can't remember, I did a little music video for Dave McKean where I was wearing this big mask. It was good fun, but I remember being struck in that moment the idea of creating your own work, and that as a kind of career path, because I wanted to be an actor, and I was thinking about auditioning, and you go and you read these great plays and perform, that would be great fun. But then, I was always struck. I remember that, thinking, I could make my own things as well.
Do you think that's, creating your own path in creative industries, is that more important today? Is it just that you couldn't do it before? Like, how do you think that sits in amongst kind of increasing digitalization and Kickstarters and all these avenues that weren't there?
I think it's always been important. Because particularly for artists and creatives, I think, personally, I need a creative output to stay sane. But I think it's more accessible now than it's ever been before. With, like you say, the technology online, you can reach a big audience quickly and easily now. And I mean, particularly in jobs like acting, even writing, any creative jobs, you've got to deal with a lot of rejection, there's a lot of no's, and it can be very disheartening. So I think if you're making your own work and do something you're passionate about, worst case, you've still got that piece of work, and it's still something you're proud of.
So to talk briefly about genre for a second, because I think you mentioned finding a niche.
Yeah.
How would you describe this lovely book, which is available both here, it's the book, the big cards at the back if anyone's not put that together, but if you're watching the stream, Google it, because I don't know what the link is. How would you describe it? I've written down Gothic horror poetry. Is that fair?
I think that's relatively fair. I'd use the word Eldritch horror as well, so that kind of H.P. Lovecraft, who I think is viewed by a lot of like yes, nowadays very problematic, but also he arguably is the founder of the father of modern horror. That's what I was trying to say. That kind of Eldritch cosmic horror, the fear of the unknown and the unknowable. That's
So in your personal life, obviously I've known you for a long time, and I know that you're just a deeply twisted individual. Every time we go to the pub, you're doing creepy rhymes, talking about some forgotten prophecy over your beer. But from a creative professional side, this was your first venture into horror properly. You touched on it before. What were your inspirations? What was your starting point for kind of branching out into a new area?
So, in terms of inspirations, like I say, those kind of dark fantasy things. I grew up watching Doctor Who. It's still my favourite show. I'm so excited for the 60th anniversary for that stuff. Reading books like Neil Gaiman's work. I remember reading Coraline when I was 10, 11. It was very scary. I know it's a kid's book. And Darren Sham's work, that kind of horror intrigues me. I've never been a fan of like the commercial horror, particularly horror films we get now. Not that they're bad, just I really don't like jump scares, and sometimes they feel a bit cheap to me. I'd much rather to be more permanently unsettled.
You see, I prefer jump scares because they scare me in the moment when I'll sleep at night, whereas it's the creepy ones that have me awake in the middle of the night.
See, I think I'd prefer a lifetime of insomnia than a few seconds of discomfort. I don't know.
So speaking of that, do you deliberately write things that creep yourself out? Does that have to be your starting point? Did you make someone else feel that? Do you go outside of the comfort zone? Do you do things you're a bit uncomfortable with?
Yeah, I think there's got to be a natural element of that, and also things that pique my curiosity, or things that I'd be scared of or interested by, and that kind of curious fascination of what's behind that door. I've been told not to look in that box, but yeah.
Nice. Well, you mentioned Doctor Who as an inspiration, and I'm bringing it up because it's probably a touchstone for a lot of people. Any particular episodes? You know, it's quite a varied thing. What were the creepy ones? What were the ones that stuck with you?
Do you know, there's an episode, I don't know if it's obviously Blink with the Weeping Angels, but there's an episode in Series 4 of Russell T Davies' era called Midnight, and it was like a low-budget episode.
Oh yeah.
And you never see the villain. It's set on a train on a futuristic world, and the train breaks down, and they're told they're on this uninhabitable void planet, and nothing can live out there, and yet something starts knocking on the side. It's just brilliantly done.
So and I suppose that ties into the Eldritch stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff you can't understand, the stuff you don't know, is kind of scarier than any definitive answer.
Well, I think there's something intrinsically scary about if scary is the right word, about our existence. Right? There is so much we don't know, and for all our science and we understand more than we ever have. We're still tiny in this huge universe. So I think there's something in our instinct there.
So on the subject of writing Eldritch stuff, writing unknowable stuff, how was the process of working with an illustrator, someone that you had to try and explain these concepts to?
So I don't know if you guys have all seen the book, but there's lots of illustrations. I worked with a brilliant artist called Bethany Clark, and she's just done amazing work. They look so beautiful on the cover as well. She did really well dealing with the kind of prompts I gave her. So the way I kind of worked was I'd write a poem or a story, and I've sort of framed out a place next to it for there to be an illustration, and I wrote a little prompt or an idea of kind of what I wanted. But as Alex says, with it being Eldritch, kind of unknowable horror, some of them were quite difficult. So this should be an image that a human couldn't imagine. And I get messages back being like, okay, but what? Can you be more specific? Or there's an image of two kind of beasts in battle at war with each other, and I described that, and I said it should look like there are two, but also many, but also they're just one. Anyway, she fielded it really well, and it just looks amazing.
Yeah, Beth is actually here tonight, so we should probably have a round of applause for her. Particularly if she's managed to illustrate that sort of description, which I think I'd pull my hair out at. Did you change any of your work at all to kind of make not necessarily easier, but to match the illustrations? Did Beth draw something you thought, oh, that's something I haven't thought of in that way before? Did it kind of go both ways?
I think I'd pretty much done the writing first at that point. I think if anything else, there were some edits done. And there were definitely things we worked together on, ideas like there's some maps in there. But yeah, I think the writing was pretty much done first in this case.
Cool. Great. So something more generally I wanted to pick your brain on. AI. Is it killing creative jobs?
So this is controversial, but it's something we need to be talking about, and I don't think we talk about enough because the landscape is changing. I think we're in a very sweet spot where, so for things like admin jobs, technical stuff, in some ways with these kind of tools, it's never been a better time to be a creative because I just think AI is an amazing tool for getting that stuff done, helping you write emails, helping you do your accounts, helping you come up with ideas or writing copy for like a website or something, and then you can focus on something creative. And that gap between having an idea and executing it is so much smaller than it was even 6 months ago. And so in that sense, I think it's a great time to be a creative. The flip side is I'm not sure how long this window lasts for. But
well, was it helpful for you to get in the window? Because I'm sure a lot of people here, like me, have ideas, have things that we want to do, books that we want to write, but in terms of actually getting it off the ground, was AI kind of useful for you in terms of...
In a step-by-step, so as I say, I know it's controversial, there's a lot of discussion about, particularly with artwork and the art generation ones, where that sits and where kind of what copyright's doing in the 21st century, and without getting into that too much, like, it was useful for, like you say, if you have an idea and you've got no idea how to get there, you can just ask the question and it can give you a step-by-step. And then sometimes that's all the push you need. Because I can remember times, 5 years ago, if I'd had this idea, I would have thought, that would be nice. But I'm not sure I'd have known where to start. So, yeah.
Great. Well, speaking of where you were starting from, you mentioned yourself that before any of this, kind of what you went to university for was acting, what you've been working on is acting. Will be in the Birmingham pantomime if you want to catch him in the month of November and December. How did that tie in? Was there kind of skills that you learned there that you brought across from TikTok and also then the writing of it?
Yeah, so like I kind of touched on, I think my love's always been storytelling and our intrinsic nature for storytelling. I think in some ways we are all just stories, and to ourselves we're stories we tell ourselves and stories we tell each other. So I think that's what's at the heart of it. Performing I love, and you can probably tell by the TikToks and the amount I do them, but also with acting, yeah, so I graduated drama school in 2018 as an actor, musician, and yeah, I dabble in so many of these different kinds of, but it's just as long as I can tell stories and be creative, that's what's at the core of it. And I suppose the thing I worry about is, for example, particularly on social media, my output can be quite varied. I'm sort of trusting the algorithm to show the right things to the right people. But I think so many people talk about just finding your niche and staying in it, and I don't think I could do that. I think I've got to still tell the stories I care about.
I am interested in exploring that further, but I want to cycle back to you saying the stories we tell ourselves and each other, which sounded amazing. What do you mean? Like, what's the thoughts behind that?
Well, because I think, okay, well, there's two things. So I think psychologically, how we go about our lives is just an idea, really. I think we have perceptions about what other people think of us, and we have perceptions of other people, but I think that's kind of made up. Like, I think you can just tell yourself a different story, and that will change. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I explained.
This is more of a quick fire question.
Mm-hmm.
Just first thought that crosses your head.
Worried.
Don't overthink it.
Oh gosh.
Who is more important to the success of this book, the writer or the illustrator?
Illustrator.
Very good. Good, I'm glad you answered that properly. Great.
All sorts of reasons.
Yeah, so going on to some of the questions, all of you do have a think about questions you might want to ask, because if you're interested in creative arts, if you're interested in, having a following on social media, which Will's obviously done, or self-publishing, Kickstarters, crowdfunding, any of this stuff, do have a thing, but we have some questions that were pre-submitted, which I'm going to start with. First one being, and this was from Anonymous, do you deliberately make your voice sexy when reading poems? And is that the key to engagement?
Did you?
It's from the internet.
Okay. I try to evoke a kind of dark feeling with them. That's as much as I'll say.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to expand on the overlap between dark and sexy, or would you rather leave that one alone?
I think I'll leave that for people to decide.
That's for everyone by themselves. Next follow-up's been, what would you say your biggest lesson has been? What do you wish you'd known to begin with?
There will always be something you haven't thought of. It seems obvious, but yeah, even with a big task and you think you can lay out the steps, just be prepared for it to just take 5% more time or cost 5% more. You have to just learn something else. Something won't work, there'll be friction somewhere, and it will be okay. Also, perseverance and just getting your head down and doing the work, I think.
Any particular examples, apart from the microphones, because I want to be aware of that one, but any particular examples of kind of really pain points or pinch points? Or
So things, it's not so much pinch point, but things like something I hadn't considered because I wanted to ship these books internationally. Different countries have different tax codes and import taxes, and as much as it's amazing we live in a globalized world and you can post something to New Zealand, and in some ways everyone works together and you can post something anywhere, and then you realize that every country does the post different. And yeah, anyway.
So just touching on that, both the Kickstarter, TikTok more generally, did you feel that you had quite a British voice and therefore would just get British people and were surprised to have got kind of this, across the world following? Or
so the largest part of my TikTok audience, it's shifted a bit now, but particularly at the first of these sketches is in America, and the majority of the Kickstarter backers were Americans. That did surprise me. I suppose I could kind of post-rationalize it and say, in the American Midwest, and there's a big movement of the love for kind of the occult and part of their culture. If you look at horror movies and that sort of stuff, that's great there. But yeah, no, that was a surprise, really.
Right. And did you, on that data, did you change your output at all, or do you just think this is what people are liking, I'm just going to stick with doing what I'm doing?
I don't think I changed my output. I think I clocked it. Things like time of day that I posted things is probably the main thing that would have changed on that, because I was thinking if I'm reaching an audience that's awake at this time, yeah. But no, it's always interesting to kind of stay on top of the analytics and the data, but I wouldn't let yourself get too led by it. I think it's important to know, but yeah.
Cool. Next question was, if you could do one specific thing differently, just across all of it, not your life in general, just specifically this, what would it be? Or maybe approach it with a different mindset, or just kind of anything that really took you by surprise?
I mean, I suppose I really enjoyed doing it, and it's a short novella, 120-ish pages, which is what I wanted it to be from the start. I suppose if I'd given it more time, then I could have made a longer book.
Did you want to do a longer book?
I mean, I'm posting new rhymes and stuff that's not in the book. I've got more ideas. I could always write more. You and I know we're working on some related things. I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, which we will get to. I wanted to write about that, or ask about that, sorry. As part of the Kickstarter, you had a bunch of, if you pledge this much, you get the book. If you pledge this much, you get a personalised poem, which kind of blew the doors off, and that's what a lot of people went for.
Yeah.
Would you change that now because you had such a massive workload of poems?
I'm not. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd do it quite like that again.
Okay.
I mean, it was amazing. And it was really amazing to be reached, for people to reach out to me and kind of tell me their stories, because I asked people what they wanted their poems to be about, and some people told me really personal stories and gave me really inspiring things to write about, and that was lovely to kind of touch points of the community like that.
On the subject of poems, there was actually a second reading, which I completely skipped past, which I remember that we did talk about you doing. So if there is another reading,
sure, I'll read one more to whet your appetite for this book.
Which again is available behind you or on Google.
Oh, you're so good at it.
I get commission, if you're wondering.
Okay. Sorry, I should have put a bookmark. Lessons learned, put a bookmark in the book where you want to do the reading.
That is a good thing to do differently.
That's it.
It's fine. This kind of dramatic pause just draws everyone in, I'm sure.
There it is. Okay. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief, ploughman, painter, preacher, jailer, bard, scribe, whisperer of grief, alchemist, prophet, enchanter, spy, dreamer, jester, falcon's eye, veil ripper, gatekeeper, a serpent's lie, watcher, warden, shadowed cry, gloom caster, nightmare weaver, dark lantern, silent deceiver, eldritch seer of the underfeather, twilight bringer of stormy weather, moon mad scholar, starborn hound, key keeper of the shadowed ground, void walker, secret keeper, eternal vigil, dreamless sleeper. Crone whisperer, faceless queen, puppet master behind the unseen, song singer of the midnight sun, keeper of the forgotten one, archivist of the cyclopean tone, scribe of the echo in elder's bone, silent sentinel of the abyss, witness of the final unholy kiss, mirror gazer, cryptic sparrow, guide of the path ever narrow, last whisperer of the ancient chant, knower of the seed that can't, squid-headed scribe of the eternal deep, warden of secrets that shadows keep, walker twixt the stars' cold blight, singer in the endless night, prison-bearer of the inky black, harbinger of the universe's rack, timekeeper of the celestial tear, the last echo of cosmic fear. So round and round the roles we play in this grand theatre of night and day. Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, darker still, the cosmic jailer.
I can see what they mean. That is both dark and sexy. Well, well, this one's very nice. Again, pre-submitted question. Do you or your charming interviewer have any upcoming projects that you want to share?
Did you just add that little bit in? No, so yes, we do. So there's two things we want to talk about, both either related, i.e. kind of same world as the book, or similar aesthetic. First of all, a group of 4 of us, so us two, our wonderful illustrator Bethany and Maddie as well, are working on a tabletop RPG or Dungeons & Dragons campaign based on that kind of Eldritch horror theme and magpies. I think working title of One for Sorrow.
Yes.
And yeah, so we're writing it. Bethany's doing some amazing artwork. Maddie's been writing some brilliant music, and we think that's going to be such a unique point for it, how there's going to be specific tracks for different encounters, and I think it sounds great. So the music you would have heard when you came in is one of the pieces of music from that Maddie composed. It's amazing. Yeah, anything you'd add on that?
Yeah, just as Will mentioned. Oh, is that a question?
Yes.
I'll come to you in just a moment. Yeah, as Will mentioned, the art completely original, no AI used. Same with the music, and we're just, while we're still working on a release date and kind of campaign, it's upcoming shortly.
Yeah.
We're just trying to do everything possible to give people the sort of experience they might see when people, professionals play it online. So that's something we're working on. Yeah, question.
Yes, sorry to bother you, thank you. I was not aware of this event. I was just bypassing.
Okay.
So when I come here, I took the book, but I read the page that you were reading just now. What's the connection between my reading and your readings? And then I want to go.
Sorry, say again, couldn't quite hear.
I read the page that you were reading just now.
The bit I just read, yeah.
Yes, and then I finish it, I'm interested to start here. What's the connection between me and you then?
Well,
Why did I read that?
So that seems to be a more general question about, does art exist as a single piece? Is it a conversation with whoever's reading it, the author to the reader? How do you see that relationship? Are
You
you?
didn't know
I
that
didn't
was going to be the reading.
Yes, I didn't
Oh,
know
I
that.
see.
Wow.
And myself, I was asking, why am I standing here?
Halloween magic.
And
did
then
you?
the one Grimoire. The Grimoire. It's very powerful word.
Well,
So I will come back to you. I will have the answer from you in the future. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for your time, and have a nice Halloween. Grimoire in Arabic, it's very powerful word. It's the era of Solomonic dynasty. Thank you very much.
Maybe he's the next doctor.
Yeah. Well, apart from being completely upstaged, someone who should be writing
Love you.
some Eldritch poetry of their own.
yeah.
The question I misunderstood, I'll touch on it anyway. Do you feel like the meaning of your words, your poetry, is yours to say? Is the author dead, or are you very much alive and you're going to tell people this is what you mean by it, or is it for them to come to their own?
I think, so my attitude, I've always said this is my attitude with songwriting, is you kind of, once you create something and put it out, you're giving it to the reader, the listener, the consumer. so I don't want to impose too much of that on them. But I think, when two people read a book at the same time, they share in something, there's a journey there, and words connect us. We used to pass stories down orally, so yeah.
Great. Before we got so wonderfully distracted, we were talking about another project, which I'll begin talking about. We're working on a podcast together, which we're writing together. Will's going to be doing a lot of the voice acting because of his aforementioned great voice. Is there anything you want to share about that?
So it's going to be an audio drama, very much in the world, in keeping with the world of the book. If you've read the book, or if you go and read the book, you'll see that kind of at the heart of it, there's a few short stories as well as the poems, and what this is a collection of rhymes and dark words that someone has gone around and collected into this book. And I suppose it raised the question for us of what was the experience of finding these lost words like, and what was that adventure, and what's the kind of dark truth behind that? And there's definitely a story there, so that's what I think we're going to explore. Yeah,
if the book raises any questions, if you're interested in the themes, or you start to see the connections between different poems and stories, that's the exact sort of stuff that the podcast will be going into and kind of exploring a bit deeper. Exactly. Again, no specific date, but near future as well.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the audience have any other questions that we haven't covered so far? Yeah, please.
When's the audiobook coming out?
Great question.
So, today's the release date for the book, and so on my schedule that means tomorrow is day one of working on the audiobook. I'm hoping, without wanting to put a hard deadline on myself, definitely by January. I'm hoping by the end of the year.
So, just to follow up from that, this is released there. The book that you've been working on for months, you produce TikToks all the time, you start on the audiobook tomorrow, we're working on projects. When do you sleep?
Yeah, not a lot. I'm not going to lie, not lately. But I do what I love, so that's the balance, I think.
Very true. Do we have any other questions anyone has? Yes, I can see a hand at the back. Yeah, please.
So I work at a secondary school, so my question is, how happy would you be for me to share some of your short stories with my students for evaluation and for just learning more techniques for their own creative writing?
I think go for it. I think use your judge. I mean, how old are the kids?
It's secondary school, so
Okay, so use your judgment. I think a lot of the themes are darker without kind of being too explicit.
Yeah.
So I think generally it should be fine with that age, but obviously use your judgment and common sense there.
But
Does
from
the school have visiting authors?
Sometimes,
Oh.
if we can get people interested.
That's someone else who's on commission for Will. But obviously go ahead with that. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Hello. You've obviously dabbled in a lot of different creative fields, from music to like stage, short form video and stuff like that. If you were only able to make one field for the rest of your life, which do you feel like you could most express yourself in, and which one would you choose? Like audiobooks or illustration?
Oh, that's a hard question.
That's the point.
See, my whole framing about it all being storytelling wasn't enough to try and avoid that question. I think my answer would change day to day. If you're going to push me tonight, I'd probably say music.
So this experience wasn't enough for you.
I'm writing a song based on one of these, in fact. But it's I think there's just a layer of extra emotion as well as because it's writing words as well. But it's there's. But ask me tomorrow, I'll say something else.
That was a really great question, thank you. You've been upstage as an interviewee, I've been upstage as an interviewer because that was great. There's a question somewhere to my right in the back, yes?
Would you have in mind for your Kickstarter £1 million stretch goal?
That's a lot of money.
TV show?
Yeah, big party in a haunted mansion? I don't know.
Oh,
okay.
That. There's interest. Great, any other questions? Please.
Yes, can I ask Bethany someone?
Yeah?
Is the book based on the dress, or is the dress based on the book? Or is it all just serendipity?
The dress is based on the book.
Come on!
Any other questions? Publishing in general, the arts, doing it yourself. the secrets to go viral, which Will kind of knows as we established, but not properly. Anything else? Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming and listening to us and putting up the technical difficulties. There's Prosecco again at the side, so do help yourselves. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you all so much for your support. Thank you for coming. This is crazy. I wasn't expecting such a huge turnout, and yeah, I'm so grateful to all of you. And I'm going to be signing your books after this, so yeah, come and say hello. I'll sign some books.
Books that you can get both here and on the internet. Thanks everyone.